I believe it was just last year at 9/11, excuse me, I was in the desert, so it's nice to be attending this ceremony in air conditioning. Professor Reichman, Professor Melnick, Mr. Shavit, Mr. Fedlon, Dr. Gnor, and all the distinguished guests of the audience, thank you for the invitation to speak this afternoon. It's truly an honor. It's been 21 years since the horrific attacks of 9/11 that took place in New York City at the World Trade Center and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. And in the cabin of Flight 93, where a group of brave individuals fought their final fight and successfully disrupted what would have been another catastrophic attack on U.S. soil. Books have been written and a few movies made that paid homage to the heroic acts of the day, but I've always most valued these reverent opportunities to hold those who bravely faced that day in memoriam. Though I vividly remember the horrific events that transpired that Tuesday morning on 11 September 2001, I equally reflect upon that evening as I and the rest of the United States Military Academy Corps of Cadets held a surreal moment of silence, standing in front of Washington Hall, just over 50 miles north of the World Trade Center Plaza. Then a first-class cadet, or a senior, I and my classmates knew in a few months we would be entering service in an army at war. That night was my first 9/11 memorial. I have always used these ceremonies to reflect on my own remembrance of the day, those fateful moments of that morning and all the vivid memories throughout the day, as well as the many days that followed. Since that day, I've had purpose and individual resolve that propelled me efficiently through 2 theaters of conflict over a career spanning 20 years. No one had to remind me of the why and why I was doing it. Over the past 21 years, I've attended many of these events, and it isn't until recently that I've grasped their true power, their power to communicate. A common conversation topic you might have experienced over the past 20 years, and was actually on display for you a few moments ago with the ambassador, the American ambassador, was a question that you might hear was, where were you on 9/11? This question has become a bit of a reflective question that has created multi-generational commonality within our American culture. Much like the questions of previous generations, like, where were you when you heard JFK was shot? Or where were you when you heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor? I recently commanded an aviation battalion at Fort Bragg. While in command, I quite randomly asked one of my soldiers if they remembered 9/11, and if so, what did they remember? His response blew me away. He said, "Sir, I was not born yet." And then it struck me. We are there. We are at the transition point. It's the transition in society or culture that is a historical inflection point, a point where we can no longer assume that the why of any decisive action against terrorism is self-evident. We must continue to communicate the why. We, the witnesses of 9/11, must also recognize the perspective of these younger generations. In talking to that soldier, I came to a realization that made me more proud than I could have imagined. He did not witness the attacks, but his resolve to volunteer and serve his nation is to be held in as high esteem as those who came before him. His why is different, but just as powerful. Previous generations have done a remarkable job educating its youth about the why of past inflection points in history. Our younger generations must continue to understand the importance of 9/11 and why America and its allies spent the next 2 decades at war against terrorism and violent extremism. And we, the older generations in the room and beyond, must continue to gain understanding in them and honor the resolve of those younger generations. That is why these ceremonies are so vital. Not only do these ceremonies continue to educate the younger generations on the why, but they also continue to honor the memories of those who've fallen in the pursuit of justice while safeguarding liberty and our way of life. They are a bridge to understanding. The threat to freedom continues. Our adversaries continue to adapt and leverage capabilities and technology to pursue their maligned end state and goals. No country understands vigilance better than Israel. That is why our partnership in understanding the threat of terrorism and how to combat it is so important. May both our nations remain vigilant in preventing further attacks against achievable peace and against freedoms experienced daily across the globe. Thank you very much.